My op-ed today over is about climate change. It's kind of a follow-on. Jason Box was our guest yesterday afternoon in our third hour, the climate scientist. He spent 20 years, or nearly 20 years, since 1994? Since 1994, up in the Arctic, working for the Danish, whatever they call that. They've got a, say that again, Sean? Thank you. The Danish Geological Survey up there. You know, he had some pretty bad news, which is that because the Arctic is warming roughly 3 times faster than it is here in the temperate zones in the mid-latitudes, the consequence of that is that the Arctic, which has been storing carbon, or at least carbon neutral, for millions and millions of years, where this carbon has been locked in the ice, now a carbon emitter. Which means that we've crossed a threshold, we've crossed a tipping point, and not a good one. And so in my op-ed today, it's titled "Civilization Ending Climate Change is Knocking on Our Door." And I embedded in that op-ed, and I encourage you to check it out. There's no ads, you don't have to pay anything, you don't have to subscribe or anything, you can just read it. At hartmannreport.com, and embedded in it are 2 YouTube. The one that 7 years ago, George and Leo DiCaprio and me and Lila Connors and Earl Katz and a few other great people helped put together this 11-minute documentary called Last Hours. It's over on YouTube if you just Google my name and Last Hours, and probably Leo's name too. Although you could see it, I embedded it in today's op-ed at hartmannreport.com. And when years ago, it was about the Permian mass extinction and how most of the science suggests that the end stage of the Permian, when like 70 to 90% of all life on Earth died, that it was the consequence of methane being mobilized around the margins of the continents. This frozen methane clathrate on methane crystals. And we're not there yet. In fact, we're still apparently quite a ways from there. Although what Jason Box was talking about yesterday was just the methane trapped in the permafrost, which he said is equal to 2 to 3 times the amount of carbon in the entire atmosphere, which is breathtaking and mind-boggling. I mean, this is just, you know, the atmosphere around our Earth has about the thickness relative to the planet of the peel of an apple, or maybe at the best, the skin of a grape. It's just this very, very thin layer, and we've been pouring poison into it for 200 years now, you know, since the Industrial Revolution and the age of coal. And we have now gone past the point where climate change, global warming, the climate emergency, we have now gone past the point where it's going to cause misery and sea level rise and climate refugees. We already have that. It's going to be 100 degrees here in Portland, Oregon this afternoon. And it was 116 degrees here a couple of weeks ago, which is just, you know, unprecedented. And this heat wave is now moving toward the Midwest. And as Jason Box described yesterday, this is the consequence of the jet stream collapsing. And the jet stream is collapsing because the thing that made and kept the jet stream what it was and where it was the frozen ice cap on the top of the world, you know, and that ice cap has melted. And sea water, which is dark, absorbs a hell of a lot more heat than ice, which is white and reflects the ice, or reflects the sunlight and the heat back into outer. So you know, there are like way stations, mileposts where we can stop. The first one being, you know, had we gotten this under control back in the 60s, 70s, 80s of the last century, when scientists, including scientists working for Shell and ExxonMobil and others of the fossil fuel companies, were saying, you know, this is going to cause significant global warming if we keep burning our product. And the response of these fossil fuel giants and the billionaires that they created was to say, oh, well, let's hire some scientists to lie to people about it. It was the old tobacco lobby trick. You know, it's you get a few front men, a few shill scientists, you create some nice sounding think tanks, and you go, you know, the Center for Climate Studies or whatever. You know, I don't know that that's one of them specifically, but, you know, something that sounds very legitimate. And then you go on all the TV shows going, there's no climate change, and you have debates on CNN and stuff, all just to postpone the day of reckoning. Well, that 40, 50, 60 years of lying to us has brought us to the point where it's no longer possible for us to mitigate carbon emissions enough to prevent climate refugees. We have Nicaragua right now is in a climate crisis. The majority or the preponderance of the refugees that we're seeing at our southern border are, did I say Nicaragua? I meant Guatemala, excuse me, are from Guatemala. And the Arab Spring was caused by climate change. And when that young man in Tunisia set himself on fire, kicking off the Arab Spring, it was because the price of wheat had gone up. The price of wheat had gone up because the desert is moving south in North Africa. And thousands, hundreds of thousands of farmers have lost their farms from Syria to Libya to Tunisia to Egypt. As a consequence of that, they're now a military dictatorship. Syria, all these refugees streaming into Damascus and other Syrian cities. When they started demanding food and housing, President Assad just cracked down on them, started shooting people in the streets, and now you've got basically a civil war going on in Syria. In Libya, you know, it didn't help when we supported the guys who were killing Gaddafi, but with or without Gaddafi, Libya has devolved, largely as a consequence of climate change, into a series of neo-feudal city-states, you know, separated by massive chunks of desert. So we've already hit the point where climate change and climate refugees and climate deaths are in the millions worldwide. And starting to take out agricultural land in the United States. We're on the verge of running out of water, which will mean running out of electric power. You know, the Lake Mead, the Hoover Dam, is down to levels that it hasn't seen since it was first filled in the 1930s, I think 1935, thereabouts. And that's the electricity supply for Southern California and Nevada. So, you know, that we can't stop. Next step, the end of human civilization. Things get so bad that basically wars start breaking out all over the place, and people say, well, how could you say that? That's just, you know, beyond imagination. Well, it happened over and over and over again throughout history from local climate change. The Anasazi, who used to, you know, the Native American, this was 1,000 years ago in Colorado and Utah. They just literally vanished in the blink of an eye. Well, because there was a 300-year drought. They all ended up, you know, moving down to New Mexico and Arizona and Texas. This massive migration. The end of the Mayan civilization 3,000 years ago was the result of climate change, local climate change. The end of the Egyptian civilization, the pyramid builders, was because of climate change. The end of the Iraqi civilization, the Sumerian civilization, was because of climate change. We had between 50 and 50 in Europe, you had the Little Ice Age, which produced wars and famines and disease in Europe. So, but these were all low events. These were just, you know, the things that happen normally with you know, because local climate change is part of the normal climate variability. But now we are impacting it at a global level. There's no place left to run. And you know it's getting serious when you see the headline. And this was in yesterday's Washington Post, you know, which is just like, as I was writing this, after I wrote this article, I was just reading the papers last night. I wrote the article yesterday afternoon, as I typically do, between my time from 2 p.m. to around 6 p.m. is my, you know, right time. And I finished writing the article, and I was sitting down in the living room listening to Chris Hayes' show and reading the Washington Post on my phone. And here's this article in the Washington Post, the headline: "The best place to ride out a global societal collapse is New Zealand, study finds." I mean, when the Washington Post is running, you know, major, like, front page articles about where to go when society collapses, You know, I'm not exaggerating when I say climate change could lead to to rocking civilization itself. That's the next milestone that we will hit if we don't do something radical now. And now being now over the next 2, 3, 4 years. We don't have much time left. And if we fail to hit that milestone, then, and that gets cooked into it, then the next one is, are we going to have something like the Permian mass extinction? And I embedded both those videos, my conversation with Jason Box yesterday and the video that Leonardo DiCaprio and I made 7 years ago, in the article that you can read over at Hartmann Report. They're both short. The one that Leo and I did is 11 minutes. The one with Jason Box yesterday is around 12, 13 minutes. And they're both embedded in that op-ed that you can read today at Hartmann Report. And I encourage you to do that and to share it with people. I really think this is the issue of our day. I'm going to tell you about the coronavirus after the break, but the new Delta variant and what the CDC, some stuff just got leaked out of the CDC that's just, shocking. But that, in a way, is the result of climate change, too. It's humans moving into habitats that where humans hadn't been before. In this case, caves full of bats. So serious stuff. It doesn't mean that, it's time to commit mass suicide or anything crazy like that. It's time to get and to stop blocking a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that'll green us.